Welcome back, listeners, and welcome to the video portion for those who are watching. As always, I'm always excited about our guest segment, and today is a real treat, especially for me, as the yes that I received for this invitation was especially unique. And I'm excited to have our guest introduce herself to you today so that we can get started. So please tell us who you are.
Hi, I am Emma, and I am a Seattle content creator, and I create content for my blog, Instagram, TikTok, and other social media accounts. And I'm also the co-host of the Content Creatives podcast, where we inspire creatives to discover, grow, and own their brand. And just a little bit about me, I worked 6 years in the aerospace industry, and in summer of 2020, I got laid off and decided to take my content creation side hustle full time. And prior to that, I was just side hustling, working on my blog and Instagram on the side from my senior year of college all the way until I got laid off in 2020. And so, yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So now I'm a full-time content creator. Just celebrated my 1-year wedding anniversary. So lots of good things happening.
A lot of good things. And like I pointed out, this yes that I was so excited about, I came across Emma's content on Teachable. For those of you who've been involved in the Farah Bernier Coaching Corner, you know that's the platform that I used. And Emma was highlighted as, I forget how they phrased it, but clearly a superstar content creator. And you were teaching a course, I think, for folks who wanted to sign up and just learn from you. So I'm not going to say thank goodness you got laid off, as I'm sure that was unexpected, but what a way to take something that could have been really challenging and position yourself in a very unique situation and then answer a random invitation to be on the podcast. So again, in advance, thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. And yeah, so how I got connected with Teachable, I got my layoff notice and I was like, what do I do? And I ended up calling a friend, Tori, from her first 100K. And she literally said, launch a course. She's like, you should launch a course. You're going to have a little cushion. Hopefully, if she's like, people already look to you for content creation stuff. You can tap into an experience, whatever that may be. And so literally, I completely switched lenses. Like I had 60 days before I got laid off, and I put together a course. And then September 1st or 2nd, whatever that was, when I went full time, I was like ready to launch my course. And so I still have my course. I have a few of them, but my biggest one's how to negotiate paid brand collaborations. I know it's a very specific thing for influencers and creators, but learning how to ask for money is a huge thing in the creator industry. And so I just thought I would share what I learned negotiating brand partnerships. And with the Teachable, they basically found me and they're like, oh my gosh, can you speak about what it's like to create your own course? And so I'm so glad I had that opportunity. And I'm so glad that's how we were able to connect.
Yes, absolutely. And you talk about a few different pieces. I'm really curious to hear how you describe the space in which you're having an impact.
Yeah, so my main focus in space where I realize I've had the most impact, especially in the last few years, even in just my micro influencer community, is the content creator and influencer space. So a lot of times I think when people hear the word influencer, right, they have this image of someone taking selfies or whatever that may be. But really the creator economy, I think, is like a newer phrase for it, or the influencer space is a $1 billion industry and continuing to grow. And so I think where I kind of fit in to that whole major scheme of things is just teaching other creators how to navigate this space, how to work with brands, how to build their own personal brand. Because there's no like, you can't get like a degree in becoming an influencer, right? A lot of things, you go on Google and you search. And so at least it's for in my journey, it's been I learned something and then I teach others what I've learned. That's kind of been my path.
I love that. And especially to your point, there is no degree in this. You're figuring it out as you go. And then to have, I'll call it this kind of higher calling in it to then teach back to other people. Why was this in particular so important to you?
Yeah, so the teaching back when I started taking my blog and Instagram seriously in 2016, one of the things I realized in the industry was that other women were making money working with brands and creating content for their blogs and their email newsletters. And I was so confused about the business side. I was like, how is you're making money of
Right,
posting
right.
on a blog?
I'm like
Yeah.
that right now. I'm like, how?
And it's a different landscape. I would say in the last 4 to 6 years, it's really changed and grown. There's more resources, content, courses, coaching out there. But when I started asking the question, how is this possible? The response that I got basically was, well, you should just put a number out there when you're working with the brand and see if they accept that rate. And I was like, well, this is not helpful. And so I so I did I would say it's still trial and error, but 2016, 2018, real trial and error and how you work with brands, how you negotiate, how you talk through the statement of work. And then in my former day job, I was a project manager. I started realizing, I was like, oh, brand partnerships are just projects with deliverables, statements of works, timelines, stakeholders. And so I started, as I became more confident in my project management roles in aerospace, I started getting better also in brand partnerships. And so for me, the teaching part, I think naturally I think I lean more on the educational side just because I'm a big sister. I think by nature, I'm like, this is how you do this. Like, you can make your own mistakes, but this is what I learned. And so I've kind of just embraced that. And we realized in launching my first course, I was like, it just doesn't need to be this hard for everyone just because it was so difficult for me and how the trial and error, how you talk to brands, how you do this. It's like, oh, you know what, let's make it easier. Let's make it just more attainable, especially for women and women of color, to learn how to get comfortable asking to be paid for their work. So yeah, I think that's why. It's because I had that personal experience where people were like, throw a number out there. I'm like, no, I need like a step by step.
So say that to our project managers, like, wait, what's the specifics? Help me understand. That's super helpful to hear, though. I mean, part of this. Well, actually, before I go to that question, I'm just super curious.
Yes.
What was the biggest learning for you in that process of trial and error?
The biggest learning was that, and it's funny, this is what I also learned professionally. No doesn't mean I don't like you. There's so many reasons why people say no. And at least in the influencer space, it was, oh, it's because my content's not good enough. Oh, it's because the quality of my images is bad. Oh, it's because I don't stand out. And it's like, no, that's all of those reasons that make you unique as an influencer and creator are not the reasons why people say no. No sometimes just means there's not budget, or this is the first time a brand's experimenting with influencer marketing, right? I really struggled, and I don't know what, it must be some conditioning, right? When you hear the word no, it's people don't like me. And it's like, oh no, it's just a part of the business. Negotiating, sometimes it's not always, you can't agree to a statement of work or a set of terms that make sense for both parties. But that was, I think, a big learning for me. I was like, oh, this is not a personal thing at all.
Right. Well, and just to hear the way you call it out, no, in our minds, default is rejection.
Yes.
And so we do take that personally by default. But to hear you put it this way, there's so many other things that could play into this. So that's pretty significant. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. My other point and question was, when you talked about 20, I think you said 2016 to 2018, like true trial and error. What I'm hearing is a lot of persistence and just experimenting, seeing what's out there, seeing how you try it. And one of the things we talk about at Living Fabulously Fierce is this power behind consistency, which is what we call masterful execution. How did you put that mindset into this process of trial and error just to get yourself to where you are now?
Yeah, I would say when I look back at my journey and I look at, and focusing in my own journey, but still being in your peripherals, looking at other creators who started with me, right? There are creators
Yeah.
I started with who have 500,000 followers, and I'm at
Mm-hmm.
under 50,000 followers. But when I think about my journey, I never went viral. I never had
Yeah.
that moment where it was like, oh my gosh, this particular post or this video just went crazy. And for me, in the last, my gosh, 6 to 7 years, showing up every day consistently with intention with each piece of content I create has been how I've grown my brand. And I think people are always like, but what's the magic formula? And again, for me, it's always been consistency. And in various points in my life, I felt like I was going to take a step back or I wasn't going to focus on things. So from 2017 to 2018, I worked my aerospace job. I went and got my master's. I have my master's in digital media. So I would attend class from 6 to 10 p.m. twice a week. And so I did that for 2 years. And I thought, oh, I'm going to take a step back. I'm not going to focus on like blogging or anything. But the exact opposite happened because I was so passionate about what I was
Right.
learning. I just ended up, and so again, in like various periods, I was like, oh, I'm going to take a step back. And it's like, actually, because I think I have so much passion around creating
Yeah.
content, connecting with an audience, building a community. I've just continued to show up every day. And showing up every day varies, right? Sometimes it's writing a blog post and podcast outlines and doing all this content, but sometimes it's just, you know what, today, what's showing up to me is just responding to some comments and then going on a run and then making sure I'm filled up, right? So I would say consistency has been a major part of my journey and continues to be a part of who I am as a brand as well.
Yeah. What I love about that too is the flexibility you're giving yourself in masterful execution, and that it's different every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consistency, like you said, today may just be one blog post, a run, making sure you're refueled. One of our guests, Candace Gray, shared a little bit of that as well in terms of just showing up as your best for whatever the best is that day, but
Yes,
still showing up. And it sounds like that's what you're getting at.
for sure. And I think for anyone in the influencer content creation space, right? Because the industry we're in is 24/7 and never turns off, if
Mhm.
you don't set kind of that boundary or those general guidelines of what consistency looks like to you, you will just continue to burn out over and over again. And it's like, if you want longevity, right, especially in the creator space, it's like, okay, what is I always ask that when we actually talk about it on our podcast all this time. What consistency means to you is completely different for the next person and the next person and the next person. So like, focus, test out what consistency means to you. And then that way you kind of have a general understanding of like what success also means to you.
Yes. So many questions, so many, but
Oh,
I'm conscious of time. So one of the things I want to point to, which I love because legacy is so important, and you talked about longevity.
mm-hmm.
When you think, whenever you wrap up this space or put your mark on this space, what is the legacy you want to have as Emma
Mm-hmm.
Cortes in this space? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I would say obviously in like my 3, 5, 10 overarching, I have some
Mhm.
ideas of like what I would like to do for the influencer industry as I achieve other professional goals in maybe potentially launching my own business one day or whatever that may be. But I just think for me, and it's funny, it's like really the goal is in every piece of content, I just want to help one person either feel confident enough to take a photo in front of the camera or try a different pose or ask a brand what the budget is, right? It's just, and I know I've oversimplified it, but it's like truly, it's just one piece of content. Like, what is this piece of content today? How can I help one person do X, right? In my overarching thing. But I think overall, I think when I look back at my career, I'm hoping that I look back and I see that I've helped other women and other women of color, especially learn how to ask for their value and embrace the business side of the influencer industry and space. Because being creatives, I think sometimes there's that mindset where it's like, but I'm a creative. I can't be thinking about, my revenue target or making money. And it's like, I was like, it doesn't have to be but you can think about those things. If you can have financial goals as creatives. And so
Yeah.
that's I'm a bit long-winded, but hopefully I kind of made some sense in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I appreciate about that is there's so many different perspectives, views, and opinions about influencers and what this space really means and what it's all about. And a lot of the, I will say, my opinion, critical views of the space, which I want to quote you on this again, it's a $1 billion industry, is that it's a generational thing and that's it. And it's self-serving. But what you've pointed to in your focus on the longer term, on your legacy in this, is that you do want it to convey feeling. And that feeling is better or confidence or just these good things. And you can do that in this work. So that's super, super helpful.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad to shed some light into, because again, right, we see, the articles and things like that. And it's like, I promise it's a multifaceted industry. And I do think influencers and creators help brands move forward in better ways. Like there's some, I will say, like I have seen brands grow and evolve to be more inclusive and diverse. Not, I mean, besides just the public, right, demanding for it, but it's like, hey, like creators have a say in that. Like they can say, please produce like my skin tone, please. It's like, by the way, I'm doing these reviews and I can't get something to me. I'm sure there's some viral videos that people might be remembering, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And then within the industry, in our inner workings, right, it's like there's still a lot, I feel like, that we have to work through, like talking about money, like learning how to continue to collaborate with one another, bringing each other up, and then just like the kind of the knowledge and information passing, because again, it's not like we're under a union or organization, right? It's like singular people just making the choice to say, hey, here's how I did this, here's what you can learn from it.
And what I am appreciating from this is the power of voice, right? So, I mean, just even listening to you and connecting with you as we talk about beauty brands, for example, there is a connection. But if you mentioned, I won't say a brand because I don't know what you support or not, but if you said, hey, Farah, I tried this lipstick and it was after I had suggested they may want to go with a different shade for women of color, that does pull me in. And so that the power of the voice of the influencer, and where my head went was also even more so than the power of the people around the table making the decisions. Because sometimes we look at brand mistakes and we're like, how did that happen? You have a woman of color or person of color in the room and this still happened. Well, sometimes there's no safety for them to speak up, or there's consequences if they're brave enough to do so. But then we have this influencer arm that when they do well, you're not beholden to just one brand. If they don't want to play, if you will, quote unquote, play, then you have other options that you can go seek out and do what's right for the voices you're trying to elevate. So that's a huge point that we can all appreciate in the influencer space, which is huge.
For sure. No, I appreciate you kind of repeating back. I'm like, yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. You said it way more eloquently. Yes.
There's a whole lot of processing up here all the time. But one thing, I took you to the future, talking about legacy. One thing I'm really curious about, when you think of your past, when you think of your 21-year-old self, and now looking back, what is one piece of advice or information or insight that you absolutely need her to have now being where you are doing what you're doing?
I think, and I learned this during my layoff process, what I would say to her, gosh, 20-year-old Emma, I would just say the best investment is investing in yourself. Like that would probably be it. And it's scary to bet on yourself. It's scary to say, I'm going to take this class or do these resources to, do X or Y and Z. And it's like, I'm going to take this leap of faith, like, because it's all going to work out, right? Like when you invest in yourself and when you take those risks and you're betting on yourself, like you best, right? And so you got you at the end of the day. And so I think looking back again, I think through my 20s, especially, it was just so much insecurity and you just question everything. And it's just like, no, keep betting on you, keep investing on you, and you have you at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that. And especially the way you just said with so much confidence, because it is true. It's all going to work out, right? Like it is. It's all going to work out. It's just a matter of walking into the working out of the workout.
Yeah. And again, I feel like, especially I look at 20-year-old Emma and you're like, oh, okay, I graduate from college and then I start working and then I get and it's just like these step by steps. And it's like, okay, like you're going to be able to do all those things, but like, no, like bet on your passions, bet on those other things you want to experience in life, just like, and it's like, I am who I am right through those previous experiences, but if that would be probably my only thing. Cause it's like, again, you're just like, what's going to happen to me? You're like, I'm going to be great. Don't even worry about it.
I love that. I love that. And honestly, I'm right there with you. It's all going to work out. That's what really is needed to know. And so with that and all that you've kind of laid out, how do you hold yourself accountable through all the things? As I shared with you right before we started, for me, my call to action when I'm kind of off my game or just needing to self-motivate is that living fabulously fierce. Like I know what that means to me, and it helps me stay on my own game of living with aim, authenticity, intention, and masterful execution. If you had to finish the phrase, living fabulously blank, what would be the word for Emma?
Yeah. So I feel like, and maybe because I turned 30 this year, I feel like I'm like I've entered a new chapter. And so what came to mind is living fabulously always. So I think for a lot of again, I'm very reflective because I turned 30 this year. I think for a lot of my 20s, I feel like not that I needed to ask anyone for permission, but again, I think there was that, oh, can I do this? Can I take my blog and Instagram full time? Will people buy this course for me? Can I help other creators and influencers? And it's like, again, it's not that I was ever asking anyone for permission, but I do think that like, I just wasn't there yet in terms of betting on myself, being confident that I had me. And so when I say living fabulously always, it's like, okay, you know what? Like each day, each new chapter, whatever this is, I have a better understanding of who I am. And I know I deliver, value and content each and every day. And so living fabulously always, I feel like is like now a statement, right? There's no, am I supposed to be here? It's like, okay, no, I am supposed to be here. I'm owning my space. I'm continuing to use my voice, and I know what I have to say matters.
Yes. Oh, that's perfect. And I'm not even going to make fun of you for saying, I don't know. And
I know. You're right. It did come to me. I literally was like, what do I was like, okay, yeah. Okay. Now I know. It came to me.
I love it. And I love how it's tied to the permission that's not needed. It's just living fabulously always. I love that. So thank you. And so I would be failing you as the influencer if I didn't ask you, where do our listeners and viewers find you and your content so that we can continue to support you?
So you can find me at Emma's Edition on Instagram and TikTok. You can also find us at the Content Creatives Podcast. So if you are an aspiring content creator or you're interested in getting the influencer industry, we literally have over 100 plus episodes on how to get started, how to start working with brands, how to figure out your niche. Basically, it's like just for anyone who's interested in that space and industry. And then you can also find my blog, emmasedition.com. And yeah, all my other socials are linked there. But yeah, thank you again for having me today.
Of course. Thank you for spending this time with us, for sharing your insight, for doing some reflection with us and providing just a peek into your world, which we do not take for granted. So truly, truly appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Viewers, as always, appreciate you watching. Wishing you a fabulous week ahead and encouraging you to stay fierce.